as life is getting harder and harder, we think about it in financial terms. We think about how much money we have, but what I think we're really feeling is a time crunch because we're working more. That I think is actually, it's a more collective human psychological health. It's a bigger stressor than anything financial.
One of the most beautiful things of Bitcoin is that it brings us towards the thing that we're meant to do on this earth.
Yeah.
Even if I had hundreds of millions of dollars in today's purchasing power, but my kids still had to live in this slavery world, that's a failure of my life.
What does it mean to want to create a better tomorrow? It's like rolling up your sleeves and doing whatever you think you can do to affect positive change.
Scott, long time coming.
It has.
Great to be in the flesh with you, man.
Yeah, we have been talking about this for months.
Yes, first met you in El Salvador. I heard your talk, which is on YouTube. Definitely will be linked in the podcast. Highly recommend watching that whole entire talk about, was it the Renaissance, the Golden Age that we're moving into. And I find a lot of your content and your podcast, everything, to be very optimistic. I guess, what is it about Bitcoin that gives you optimism for the future?
Oh boy. Yeah, I think it can be really easy to get trapped in the doom spiral. And this is the way our world has been arranged. And I don't think it's by accident, right? We get fed fear porn and disaster news cycles. It's just kind of how things have evolved. Sensationalism. And so, we're all sort of adopted into this system that has a, dopamine addiction, dopamine depletion. You're talking about blue lights, like it's everything, right? And, and so if that was just it, I think it would still be hard. And then you realize at some point along the way that the monetary system we're all forced to participate in is designed to continually make the game of life harder and harder. And that thing is, it's kind of the, I think, thing that breaks the camel's back, the straw that breaks the camel's back. So for me, Bitcoin is this innovation that really lets you anchor onto something, the possibility that the solution already exists. There's a lot of things that have to happen, but the most important thing is helping as many people as possible see that solution and have them have a glimmer of, the things that inspire us, people who understand it. So I have like an unwavering belief that people are hardwired to want the world to be better tomorrow. And it's because this is how, we're here to procreate and further the human race. So that's already, in my mind, like built into our basic programming. And so if we have something like, it's like a buoy, we can hold on to it and tether, then you have a reasonable belief that actually things could get better. And the stronger your conviction, the better you understand this thing, I think the more optimistic you become because of this underlying fundamental intrinsic nature of us. It's this human survival. And so, yeah, I believe in the collective of humanity, and I think that it's just a matter of time until enough of us figure it out that we're going to be able to pull everyone else along with us.
So the first thing I wrote down was that you said on your podcast with Cedric from Bitcoin Matrix that Bitcoin is a buoy, something that we can like hang on to in this crazy sea of chaos everywhere. And I find myself always wanting to interject Bitcoin whenever I talk to people. And over the years, you kind of get jaded, you kind of want to be orange pilling more people. But the angle that I've found to just be the best way into that conversation is through optimism, because naturally people start talking, especially nowadays, like, oh man, I can't get a house, I can't do X, Y, or Z, or I have to work so much just to like barely get by. And then you can you look at them and you kind of say, oh, you know what makes me optimistic? Well, the fact that I'm not being stolen from, or whatever angle, it depends on who you're talking to. But I've found that optimism is a great entry point to bring up Bitcoin, and just my 2 cents.
Oh, it's super magnetic. It's kind of like that. There's this epic video of the person on the hillside of the rave who
I
starts dancing.
love that video.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then eventually everybody starts dancing.
That's absolutely it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a video in El Salvador about Berlin, the circular economy there, and I put that video in because the person I was interviewing, her name's Evelyn. She's one of the people that just showed up to this small town in El Salvador and started asking merchants, will you accept Bitcoin? Will you accept Bitcoin? And they were all just like, what are you talking about? Eventually, they built relationships, built trust, and then one merchant, one taco seller in the street saw, hey, that guy's getting all the business, and it was like that. So then all of a sudden, now there's 150 or more merchants there. So that's so true. It just takes that second person to join, and then once the second person, it takes the crazy first person, then the second person, and then it's just a freaking party. And honestly, that's what Bitcoin is. Like, there's so much discussion, and especially in podcasts, it's like a lot of theory. And this is why I value getting in person at events, Bitcoin conferences. I highly recommend, like, if anyone's just on Twitter, Nostr, just engaging through the internet, you have a way different view of Bitcoin when you go talk to people in real life.
100%. I love conferences for that reason. And, it's like my reason for wanting to be there has completely changed. My first few, it was really all about having the opportunity to see some of these people I was so interested in speak live. And now I almost never actually watch the talks. And I just want to network and talk to real people. And it's so cool. And the vibes at Bitcoin events are so high. And they're people from all over the world and people who've gone out of their way to come to this certain thing. And it's like that wherever you go. Like, it doesn't matter what event it is, if they're the small ones, they're the big ones. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to talk about your talk today.
Sure.
So the main theme is time. And so I guess my first question is, why is it important to understand the value and scarcity of time in relation to our lives? And just give me a little, I hope that the video will be online as well, but maybe not today. But yeah, just give us a little spark notes on the talk, and then I've got some specific questions about it.
Sure, yeah. I think that Bitcoin is a way for us to think about time differently, and I have been spending a long while kind of ruminating on this concept because of something I learned very early in my career in traditional finance, this notion of the time value of money. And the time value of money is the idea that it's better to have money now so that you can start growing it faster. And that sort of presupposes that time is on your side because growing money is good. But what is actually happening is you need extra time. You need a head start to grow your ice cube faster than it's melting. And so by extension there, we do price time. And everything like kind of ripples out from that. We think about all of our long-term goals. Most of them have a financial component. So the things that we want, places we want to get to in life, or things we want to own, and what's going to be required to get there, we're continually pricing time. And I think it's, part of what I was talking about today is this really weird idea. I've said this before about the innovation of central banking on its own, I don't think was bad. And I actually do believe that for a time it was beneficial. So central banking emerged out of, problems with currencies collapsing and counterfeiting. There was like multiple currencies in the United States as an example. It's a problem. And we needed a centralization in money to allow for standardization so that money could move more reliably and more quickly and enable the global economy to scale and become more complex. And so for that moment, for that era, that was a really beneficial thing. The stealing has just compounded to a rate after 100 years now where that thing has really become, twisted and no longer, I think, fulfills the purpose, the benefit of what it originally did. And technology now has made it so that its original reason for existing is also kind of obsolete. So we have this reality that central banking devalues money progressively, and that on its own also might not be a problem, but we measure time in a constant way. So I have this idea that you have to put the invention of central banking together with the invention of the mechanical clock. Because the clock, when it was invented, enabled us for the first time ever as a species to start thinking about exact time, seconds, minutes, and hours, and so that we could do things for exactly 2 hours, or we could be expected to be somewhere at exactly a certain time. So when you smush those two things together, time as we measure it, the amounts of time that we met out does not change. But if we're thinking about the relationship, the thing that we would appraise that time with is becoming less valuable. Now, so each of us, we only have so many hours in a day. We only have so many hours in a week, so many weeks in a year, and we're only alive for so long. So our time is super finite, and we can only spend so much of it doing certain things. So if we can work 40, some of us could work 60 or even 80 hours in a week, there is an upper ceiling. And as money is devalued, what it's really doing is devaluing what you can get in return for your finite time. So this is a big problem. Like we don't think about it this way, but it is really making it's actually, as life is getting harder and harder, I think we think about it in financial terms. We think about how much money we have.
I see.
But what I think we're really feeling is a time crunch because we're working more. We just have less time. And that I think is actually, it's a more, for like collective human psychological health, it's a bigger stressor than anything financial.
Totally. I really resonated with what you said about how most people are not just trying to get wealthy for the sake of it. What myself and most people that I know want is autonomy and more time to do what we love to do.
Mm-hmm.
Spend time with our family, travel, ride my bike, whatever it might be. I can't imagine being able to make, like right now I'm working on a documentary film. I would never have been able to do something like that without this thing that I can store my time reliably in.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the 21 years lost in Interstellar meme. And it's funny because two people today have brought up Interstellar, both Adam, the guy I drove up here with, and you. So I just find that to be a coincidence. And whenever I have coincidences in my life, like synchronicities and stuff like that, speaking of time, I don't get amused by them, but I'm like, okay, I'm on the right path. Like That's how I know that I'm spending my time the right way, is when just like happenstance is just, oh my goodness, like something happens that you can't really put a finger on why, something like that. But my question to you is like, how do you know that you're spending your time in the right way? Should you reevaluate that all the time? Like, how do you think about, as Scott Dedels, how do you decide how to spend your time?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that when the same thing you're describing, the cool thing about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin can store time, is that you can just, more thoughtfully spend the time you do have in a way that, suits you better. And I do also think that it makes you carefully consider your, like in the fiat world where your time is continually being worth less, there's like, it's the same way you have an urgency to spend your money. There's like an urgency to spend the time that you have doing something. And like, I don't remember this being a thing, but as an example, I know lots of people who like scroll an app while they're watching a show. It's like we're actually we're going that far to maximize our distraction. And I know also lots of people who have a hard time like watching a whole movie now. It's like this weird, like, should I be doing something else? You go to a restaurant and you'll see a table of friends and they're all actually staring at their phones and they're not even talking to each other. These are all like weird downstream problems of the time thing, I think. And so, time for me is like the best is when I couldn't say when was the last moment I looked at my phone. I'm just doing stuff with the people I want to be with, or if I'm by myself, I'm reading or taking like leisure to do things without a worry about if I should be doing something else.
It's a great way of framing it. I've noticed in my own life, there's this, you talked a lot about like, we have all these phrases around time. Time is money, time flies, these things. There's one, time flies when you're having fun, which is true in my experience. Like when you're just in the moment, like time becomes irrelevant, but actually it slows down. Like when I was just in Bulgaria, 25 days, it felt like I was there. It felt like I was there for months. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but I had so much energy. I didn't need that much sleep. Like I was sleeping half as much as I normally do. And I was just energized. And like, this has happened a couple times in my life. Once when I went to Nepal and just went trekking in the mountains. And they have a phrase there, trekking is the pleasure of walking. So it's not about getting from point A to point B as fast as possible, which is my normal, when I go for a bike ride or a hike, it's like, all right, I got my Strava app and I want to get to the top of this mountain, and how fast is my time? Did I go 4 miles per hour, 5 miles per hour, whatever? There, it's like, they laugh at that. They're like, they call it the mountain marathon. They're like, why would you rush through the most beautiful part of the journey?
Yeah.
So yeah, Bitcoin has definitely helped me like reframe time in many ways. And the other thing I want to mention is a quote from Mark Cuban I heard a while ago is like, basically like life is a time arbitrage is the way he puts it. So it's like, how do you get the most money with the least amount of time? That's his way of phrasing it.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong until you factor in the scarcity of time, I think, because once you realize like life is not, it's not just a game of how much money can I make with the least amount of time. It's actually, what do I want my life to look like when I look back on it from my deathbed? Like that's what motivates me. I think forward in the future and I say, what do I want to look back and say like, oh, I did that or I didn't do that or something, like, what are my deathbed regrets going to be? They're the number one, number two deathbed regrets are I worked too hard and I didn't spend enough time with my family. So having that perspective, I just had a couple thoughts on that.
I have this, I just ran, like we were talking about synchronicities, and I have a tattoo on my on my left arm that's 21 years old, and I hadn't thought about this until you just said that, and that tattoo says time flies and we all fly with it. And yeah, so it's funny. Yeah, I agree. I think this is the idea of like we wouldn't have to work more or earn more in the same way. We wouldn't even conceptualize it in the way we do now if our money wasn't degrading. And this is the problem of being forced to use a form of money that you just can't save in. And because we have even now like sort of confused saving and investing, and like people didn't used to do that. Like our grandparents going way back, like it most for like 150 years ago, a worker or farmer or whoever, if they had money left over, they would just do nothing with it, and that was an option. Right. And so you can't do that now, and so you actually have to gamble the money that you have saved and take an extra risk with that. And I love this like phrase. I don't love it, but like the idea that you actually have to earn your money twice. Like the game has gotten so hard. You earn your money, you pay taxes on it, and then you have to earn it again. And if you're lucky enough and you can do that twice, you might be in a good spot. And yeah, no wonder people feel like they don't have any time.
Another thing that I love about Bitcoin, I've shared this, but like it just simplifies things. You can get back to living your life. You build skills, you add value to the market, and then you save that value. It's not this multiple pronged thing where you have to be a hedge fund manager and things like that. On that note, my question is, You've obviously spent a lot of time thinking about the future of what the world might look like, what the future of work might look like on a Bitcoin standard. Uh, how do you think about the skills that will be valued in the marketplace being different than today? Real quick, I have a memory, I'll never forget this. I'm in college and the teacher had every single person in the room share what they wanted to do as their profession. Like, raise your hand. Okay, we're going to go down the line. Every single person in the class either said consulting or investment banking. I was in a business school. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, I want to do like my own business and be an entrepreneur. And I always had this idea of I don't want to be in the cubicle. I saw my dad do it. He was successful with it. And that wasn't for me. And I knew that. But just to ask the question is like, how does the world look differently and what skills are valued and like, do we have more engineers? Do we have more artists, or what is more less investment bankers? I don't know.
Maybe that's a good question. You know, we are living through a very incredible time, and I wonder about. You know, I used to say like my grandmother. She was born in 1919, and lived through so many like the first of this and that, and when she died, like the world was impossibly different from the one where she was a kid. And what we will live through, I think, will make that look like, you know, a child's play. And so I'm 45, and the world that I grew up in, even, you know, I was 12 when we got the internet in our home. And I remember my mom sort of sitting me down to explain that we were getting the internet, and it was gonna tie up the phone line. And, you know, that was how it worked at that time, was like, it took you about an hour to download one photo. And web pages didn't exist, so you couldn't actually see a preview of the photo before you started downloading it. And so, like, this has happened in my lifetime. And, like, things are just so different. We rode bicycles, and, like, you know, you would just ride a bike over to your friend's house to see if they were, like, available to, yeah. So how is the world going to look? I think that I don't know how soon, like if it's 2 years or 12 years, but I think it's going to be normal that AI and robots are going to be doing a lot of the jobs, which is kind of an extra variable that makes me unsure about how to even maybe answer that question. Because, you know, I think that Bitcoin has the room to remove a lot of things that we would just say are really fiat. A lot of middleman stuff, a lot of like, you know, purely extractive things that don't actually add value. But at the same, you know, simultaneously, AI is going to be smarter than a lot of us. So like hedge fund managers might not actually exist because it may not make sense to have a human doing that job anymore. Hard to say. So I think the one that does really stand out to me either way is kind of like artisanship. And that could look like a lot of different things. But I sort of think of it as like we're moving towards a world where things will be infinitely replicable. And in the Bitcoin world, people will really only be willing to trade for value. So if you put those two things together, the things that will likely bring people success in that future world are the ones where there's like a real mastery involved, and you know, the innate like human creativity and things that are like unique and have value because of the proof of work. And so that could be experiential stuff. Like I think that people are going to want in-person things. I think that too, because I don't plan on living my life like in the metaverse, you know, Ready Player One. Yeah. So again, like, and it could be if the way we live changes because of some kind of abundance that happens from technology, you're gonna want to be able to lever all of the extra time that you have to do things that are gonna like really be special.
And specifically, I know you hone in on this a lot on that talk in that talk in El Salvador, and even you brought it into your talk today. But the the cities and the places that we live in my view, very much impact like not only what we visually see, but how we feel about ourselves. There's a concept called new urbanism, and the idea is that cities should be walkable and
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable to be around. And I think a lot of people discount how much these like copy paste buildings actually impact our psyche on a deep level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you think Bitcoiners are going to be leading this, building this new citadels and things like that? What's your take on that? Like,
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think that there will there's going to be a big transition in how money works, and one of the things that will happen as Bitcoin matures is something that I like refer to as the dematerialization of value. So that all the things that we use in the paper money world to store value, all of that value transfers into this timeless, non-physical thing that is portable and does, all the things we like Bitcoin for. So that's a lot of wealth transfer. Like there's just a ton of wealth being stored in physical stuff. And I think, so if it's the Bitcoiners that are expecting more value and having this optimism that we were talking about at the start of the conversation, then I hope so. I also think like I've seen some really cool things about using robots to like not humanoid robots. One video I watched was about a water jet robot that could carve like incredible granite sculptures at scale.
wow.
So that we could start reasonably like building the beautiful granite buildings again with symmetry and like sculpting that would be difficult to do with human man hours. Um, so yeah, maybe the Bitcoiners start, have the wealth to enact projects like that, and that would be cool.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to ask you because you have decided to build your own business, which is something that requires a lot of time and effort. Um, what is Block Rewards? Like, give me a little bit about why you're building something for the future. Like, I can imagine that there's not maybe like product market fit in the traditional sense today, but as Jeff Booth, who's someone I look up to, says, like a true entrepreneur builds something so that when the time is right, the product is ready and things are ready. So I'm curious just to hear from you, like what it is that you're building and how it fits into the future that we're moving to.
I'm a huge fan of Jeff's too, and it's exactly that idea for me. When I hear so super broadly speaking, Block Rewards is and as far as I know, the world's first Bitcoin only compensation rewards company. We want to build the tools for the way people will be paid in the Bitcoin standard world that I believe is coming. And it's not like I think we're going to be operating on a Bitcoin standard in 2 years. So our earlier products are more like digestible and they look like the products that people get paid with now. And they're just easy ways to start earning some Bitcoin, excuse me, saving in Bitcoin. Um, you know, like for the same reasons we were talking about pricing time and the benefits of the psychological benefits that come with saving in Bitcoin. I think that those are all the basis for really great things to introduce into a workplace. And then everything else that comes with it. Like, if along with understanding Bitcoin comes like an expectation of quality and a general level of optimism, I think like most companies would want those traits in their employees too. So I think that Bitcoin is a remarkable tool for rewarding employees and their work. And it also forms the basis for a great corporate culture. And so it's like it's a new kind of an agreement between an employer and an employee where the value transfer has been really created into a win-win. We have this massive transformative purpose at Block Rewards that is harmonizing the energy exchange of value creation. And so this is kind of our North Star around thinking about what we're trying to bring into the world. So I also think that, technology, it's like overestimate what happens in a year and underestimate what happens in 5. Like I think about Bitcoin a lot like I remember email. And when I started university in 1997, we had just started using email. Like the students got an email address when they enrolled. And like nobody even thought to check email. Like we just didn't actually even have that habit. And by the time I finished my undergraduate degree, so like 5 years later, you couldn't be in the workforce without using email. Like it was already normal. So I kind of think like Bitcoin, if we're at 1997 in email with Bitcoin, then that's like 2030 and things could be really quite different. And it's not going to be a light switch thing. So like over the next 5 years, I would expect people are going to start to understand this better and better. And there's lots of reasons to believe that. Like, I don't think it's that big of a leap for a company whose executives understand their company should be saving in Bitcoin to realize that their employees should be saving in Bitcoin. That seems pretty intuitive. And if they see what's happening to their corporate balance sheet, how long is it before they're going to start thinking about their personal balance sheets? Like all of these things, I don't think, and like the number of companies that are employing a corporate treasury strategy went from 1 to, I don't know, it's a couple hundred now. So that's a couple 100,000% increase in 5 years. Yeah. So it's and this is the thing, I think it's like people in Bitcoin are skeptical, or like they want some kind of a signal that like, okay, it's happening. But it's already happening. Like we're living in it right now. This is just like what it was like when the internet was being like adopted, and like when the internet was, from the time that we got home internet when I was 12 to, it was another 9 years before you could make a payment. Like there just wasn't a way to do online commerce.
And people didn't trust it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember all this, like in the late 90s, like there was all kinds of discussion about how the internet was going to be monetized. Like people didn't even know. And there's a really funny story about like somebody had McDonald's.com, and McDonald's didn't understand that they just didn't automatically get it. And yeah, and now McDonald's is like does a massive amount of their revenue in online sales. Like they're effectively an internet company. So, and that's only 20 years. That would be from like 2000 to 2020. So we just are, I think, hyper fixated on these really short-term things with Bitcoin at the expense of really how much change is actually happening. Yeah, so Block Rewards is planning for this general increase in, I think people are going to start expecting to be paid in money that retains its value.
Well, that's the one thing I was going to add is like that seems to me inevitable because that's a conclusion I came to is like I want to be paid in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be paid in, I call it poverty paper, but it's
I actually don't. I'm surprised how many Bitcoiners are happy to just work for paper and then just trade it as quickly as they can. And when they should know that they could help other people, help their coworkers, by like I would love to see this idea just get a little bit more normalized, and I hope that this will come.
It's kind of a chicken egg thing though, because if you get paid in Bitcoin, but we still live in this world where everything is in fiat, not everything, but most things, there's only a certain few hubs around the world that you can actually live on Bitcoin and like trade your Bitcoin for all the goods and services to live.
Yeah, and that's where like so for now we're not actually trying to go after people to have their entire paycheck paid in Bitcoin. But like, well, whatever you can afford, and if your employer wants to offer you something too, then that's a great way to start saving in Bitcoin, start your journey. And it's just true that people, when they're having a deduction at the source of their paycheck, that's the easiest way for people to set some money aside. And back to this thing about people just used to save. Like, I really think, what part of what we're trying to do is, from the educational standpoint, is reframe what you're doing with Bitcoin when you're not spending it. It's not an investment. You're just saving it. You're saving it in the hardest money ever invented. And that is actually much less risky than anything you might do trying to gamble on a CEO or a sector or a technology.
That's a big shift to get. It's a big like inflection point when you get to that. You're like, wow, actually Bitcoin is the least risky thing.
Yeah.
Because they say, well, don't put anything into Bitcoin that you aren't willing to lose.
Yeah.
And Saylor, I take issue with a lot of stuff that he says. Number one being that he's never even thought to pay his employees in Bitcoin. But he says like put in what you can afford that you can't afford to lose, right?
Yeah.
It's a complete reverse. It's kind of like the inverse clown world we live in again.
Yeah.
Like things tend to be the opposite of what we actually are programmed to think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same. Saylor, I think, is he's an important figure, and at the same time, we really, Bitcoin is a leaderless thing and doesn't need, main characters.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I was talking about this morning with Adam on the way up here was that if one person was able to either negatively or positively impact Bitcoin, it wouldn't be a resilient system.
Mm-hmm.
It would be something that's weak. You can push it around or change it. Even the U.S. government, right? No one has the ability to shut it down. Like Jason Lowry, I don't know if you've read his work, but the question that he asked that kind of clicked in my mind was like, how much energy, speaking of like power projection, would it take to shut the internet down and keep it shut down?
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to literally bomb every single server in the entire world in perpetuity. And that's like Bitcoin. So in my optimistic view, like we're moving to this world where like physical power projection actually is less valuable. And I agree with Jason on a lot of these things. Like if you want to be safe, you need something that cannot be destroyed, stolen, taken from you. Like so that was another big unlock for me for sure. And the other thing that blew my mind that you said in El Salvador was just like how we're going to have to rethink like what our salaries are. Like, and if Bitcoin is such a scarce asset, then you can't expect to be paid the same amount over time.
Yeah, if it's appreciating, then you should be getting paid decreases and be happy about how little decrease you get.
Right.
And if more people are trying to get access to the network and the money is becoming even more scarce, you may be getting big pay decreases. If I'm also like I disagree with the idea of diminishing returns. I think it's actually going to be accelerating returns, because when we go from 100 million users to 3 billion users and all of their businesses and governments and everything comes with it, like it's gonna speed up. So I think we go from like whatever it is now. I was talking to Willie Woo in an episode of our podcast like a month ago, and he was talking about $100 million Bitcoin, and then at some point we just stop pricing Bitcoin in.
Right.
Yeah.
At some point, no one's going to trade paper for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Luke Broyles, do you know who that is?
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy who really like opened the door to the Bitcoin space for me. I saw him tweet, "I need a videographer for El Salvador." I said, "I'm your guy. Let's go." And he's extremely bullish. And he one thing that he shared with me, which is just crazy, if you divide 21 million Bitcoin, which is actually more than will ever exist. You were just talking about that on Twitter the other day. By the total population of today's total population of the world, excluding corporations, MicroStrategy, the disproportionate amount of Bitcoin that they own, it's like 200,000 sats or 250,000 sats per person, which is like 0.025% of a Bitcoin, maybe 2 zeros. I don't know. It's so scarce. So today, what we can purchase with $50 in the future will be a lifetime of earnings. Like if Bitcoin becomes this standard thing across the world, which it seems to be on the way for sure. And yeah, $100 million Bitcoin sounds crazy now, but $100,000 Bitcoin sounded crazy at $1.
Yeah, I get all the time people have their stories about like I paid 300 Bitcoin for X or whatever, and those things I absolutely think like somebody's paying 1 Bitcoin today for something that they will be like, oh man, I paid a Bitcoin for that thing, a car, whatever. And I also at the same time, like none of us are going to live forever. So I do think like spending stuff is, like it's important to like everybody has different aspirations and like calculations in their enjoyment. And Bitcoin does need to like continually recirculate and distribute, and that will involve like people parting with their Bitcoin at some point. But yeah, I think that it will surprise people how soon I think that even happens.
Yeah, it changes, like understanding Bitcoin, lowering your time preference changes the calculus on what you purchase. I remember I used to purchase more things just because I could. I had some money in the bank account. I might as well buy something. Now I'm like, I really think about it. I'm like, is this something that I value? And the other thing I wanted to add was most people undervalue their peace of mind. And so when you shift Bitcoin from an investment to savings, now you don't think about it like, should I buy more Bitcoin? When should I buy? Should I wait for the dip? Should I do this or that? Like, how much time are you spending thinking about that when you should just, I mean, what I've found to be allowing me to just go back to living my life is just how much money do I need to live a little bit longer and then smash by the rest. The other thing I notice is this, there's two trends in this cycle, which maybe I'll ask you about like what you think about these cycles, but the Bitcoin treasury companies, number one, and I just lost my train of thought. The loans, like everyone's talking about like how do we get fiat loans? Like Jack Mahler says it's the hodler's dilemma, and in my view, that's the short-term solution. Like short-term solution, yeah, borrow against your Bitcoin. That solves the problem for the short term, so you can hold the Bitcoin and live on fiat. But like long term, like the best solution comes from doing the actual hard work to build the rails, like you're doing with block rewards, like many Lightning companies are doing, building circular economies, like all these things. What do you think like the big levers are that need to be pulled?
Yeah, this is kind of going back actually to block rewards. We were sort of theorizing like so these treasury companies are embarking on a new way of thinking about running a company. So let's imagine that General Electric has shifted their treasury into Bitcoin. And they've now really only started like having executives that understand why they're doing that. At some point, they're going to say, okay, we're only going to build refrigerators that last 50 years. And they're going to cost 5 times more than the Samsung refrigerator. But our customers will only ever need to buy one. And so we think they were willing to pay 5 times a better price for a 50 times a better product. And if you think that's wrong, go work at Samsung. And as soon as companies start to do that, right now companies compete with each other, I think unknowingly. Everything we do in the fiat world is a race to the bottom. Margins, speed, churn. And so we juice the pulp of like, quality out of everything. So this is that kind of like cascading, Bitcoin like transcends this problem so that I think we are forced to compete based on the expectation that things are good, which we don't have now. So that will mean that everything has to change. It's almost like everything, people who are into Bitcoin, you're aware that it's money that works opposite to our money. But you can't have a society that looks exactly like ours does now, where the only thing that's backwards is now the money works completely the reverse way. Because the how you're describing how you think about your own money, then that will be everybody.
So you have, like, for example, technology companies just acquiring random companies. Why? Because they have the capital and they need to grow at all costs.
Yeah.
That type of thing. I also think Bitcoin's like a index fund on all of humanity. So if you're bullish on humanity, you're bullish on Bitcoin because you're buying a slice of a pie. If you look at the history of humanity, we've only grown our productivity and
yeah, you're looking at a permanent piece of productivity forever. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, the index fund bros. My brother's one of them. He's just buy the VOO S&P 500. It does so well. I'm like, man. Another thing that I like mind blown by, like really, really good podcast. It's called The Great Taking. Guy Swan read it. I don't know if you came across this.
No.
I'll send it to you. I've been sending it to a bunch of people, but it just talks about how much risk you take when you own a claim, like an IOU on a stock or anything funded with debt. Like, you really don't own it. Like,
Yeah, I really, I think that Bitcoin is going to fundamentally transform our conception of ownership, because I think it's actually the only thing you can really own. You don't own your home.
No, you don't.
And
you're paying, basically, you buy it outright and you still owe money every 6 months.
And if you don't pay that, they will take it away.
It's insane.
Yeah. So, it confers a superior form of ownership that actually makes all other forms of ownership seem crappy once you really understand what's going on. And by extension, I suspect that people will start to really evaluate how bad they want to own other things if they're presented with a choice. And that's already happening now too. It's true. I rent my house. I sold. I had always owned a home, sold it, put that money in Bitcoin. But there's just most things now. I'm making that same decision about everything I would want to buy. Some things, obviously, in the modern world, you can't rent a bed. I mean, you could rent a furnished house, I guess, if you really wanted to, depending on how far.
Kind of gross, though.
Yeah. How far do you want to take it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, I used to be really I hated the idea of you'll own nothing and be happy.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. But I actually think owning nothing, we already own nothing. Yeah. It's so you might as well actually be happy. Just own the one thing that you can actually own.
I love that. So kind of a slight twist to what we were just talking about, but this came back in my mind. How do I phrase this? So there's incredible powers that be, whatever you want to call them. Some people call it the deep state, the establishment, the banking class, whatever. I've been, for this past bull market cycle, watching Bitcoiners become complacent. And one message that I've been honing and thinking about is the hardest days are ahead, and we're going to need to be courageous in order to go into this future. We were talking about what's happening in Canada, so maybe you can give us a little background on that. If you live anywhere else in the world, it's hard to know without boots on the ground, what's actually happening here. But do you think that this incredibly entrenched power is going to just roll over, maybe even adopt Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, like Jason Lowery's thing kind of tying in, is it'll just demonetize the criminals or defund the criminals? Or do you think there's a future in which there is a real attack on not just Bitcoin, but Bitcoiners, self-custody, the ability to transact? We were talking about you can't even get a wallet in your Primal app. How do you think about that future?
Yeah, I mean, there has been some really concerning things happened with Samurai last few weeks. I think a lot of paper Bitcoiners will lose their stack. That feels fairly obvious to me. I think that, they kind of walked it back, but the Secretary of the Treasury did say that the big plan for how to acquire Bitcoin for the strategic reserve was by confiscating it. It's kind of saying the quiet part loud. And so it's not your keys, not your coins. I think a lot of people who think they have Bitcoins are going to learn that one really the hard way. And this is an unfortunate, like, Bitcoin is like a teacher, and there was lots of people who I've met now on my Bitcoin journey who, it's this like, you understood Bitcoin in 2012. How come you're not a billionaire? And like I've met a lot of people that have like, 100 Bitcoin in a wallet somewhere that they lost. And like even our CTO, he had six Bitcoin that he spent on the Silk Road, and that was like, it was like at $100 a coin. And, it's $1 million today, Canadian. And so, yeah, I think that's going to continue. I think that I don't think it ultimately matters. Like, unless something fundamentally breaks with how Bitcoin functions, then it's, to me, inevitable. But this the thing I think is like the system can't help but break itself. And this is to the other part of your question. Like, this is happening in Canada, so they have just ruined the currency. Like they did that. They got so crazy with the money printing that now most people are experiencing a really difficult time just having a normal life here. And for most of my life, I spent most of my life in Canada. There was barely a discernible difference between living in Canada and living in the United States in terms of like cost of living and stuff.
I remember going to Whistler and it was like $1.25 to $1 Canadian.
Yeah.
And now it's like, what is it, 150? It's like completely shifted the other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
On top of the debasement that we felt in the US.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, they may try to roll out some kind of CBDC and just print everyone onto like state allowances. But if they do that, Bitcoin will become insanely valuable, and that still collapses like the current system. In Eastern Canada right now, it's illegal to walk in the forest. Like they've made it, it's a climate lockdown. So $25,000 fine if you're caught walking in nature.
Yeah, I saw a guy who intentionally walked to the Department of Resources or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Was like, hey, I'm here in the forest, videoed it. They wrote him a $28,000 fine.
Yeah.
Like that's some 1984, some crazy dystopian future that we're living in.
Total insanity. And, so I think this thing too, it's like that kind of tight grip. We saw this in 2020, like a certain percentage of the population is really willing to go along with a lot. But I think the further it gets, and this has been true for money printing, like people just have their different limits. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is for what happens with a lot of people with Bitcoin is like, this is just people at different times arriving at their moment of like, enough is enough. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, I'm a fan of Peruvian Bull, Roberto, and his dollar milkshake theories. And I think this is what's going on right now. The idea that these like weaker Western currencies will collapse into the dollar. And I think that's underway. And so that's also something I don't think it's, they can print money for a long time. But, for my entire life, if you worked full time and in this country, you could expect to have like a normal life. And that agreement has now been broken. And that's like basically the fundamental social contract. So I have a hard time seeing things continuing to progress in this direction and something really significant not changing like 20 more years. It's hard to believe. And like the debt that's accumulated here is now already so significant that accelerating money printing is like a mathematical certainty. So,
yeah, I had a conversation today with a guy who he was telling me basically that the combination of the degrading salaries plus the immigration, that's the other thing, is like you have all these people coming from all over the world. Canada's immigration rate, I don't know, I can't remember the data, but it's
completely insane.
Very high, even compared to the US. And these people are willing to do all the jobs for cheaper than the people that live here. And so there's like very little job opportunities for just the average Canadian, and it's, I don't know what the tipping point is. Like, at what point do people just say, yeah, enough is enough and we're done with it? My fear, if I have one, is that it becomes like violent or not the peaceful revolution that Bitcoin could provide. Like this life raft, like the more people that are on it, they don't need to go pick up the pitchforks. And I just saw a video in Ireland, they're burning down the immigration center.
Wow.
Like literally the building's on fire downtown because they're
Wow.
so sick of what's happening in their country. So it's not just the money being destroyed. It's like the culture, it's the people themselves. It's a lot of it.
I think it's deliberate. I mean, I think the only way you can really explain these decisions is that it's deliberate. And, in Canada, our, housing market is a giant Ponzi. They all are, but Canada's gotten really bad. And I think initially, at least, it's reasonable to think that immigration was used to prevent the premature collapse of the housing market, creating an artificial inflow of buyers. But it's totally created other problems. I think teenagers can't get jobs. Like you can't. I've seen I followed some different accounts and people in Toronto where it's like, there's 1,400 applicants for a McDonald's, and you need a university degree to get a fast food job.
Right, which is those critical formative years when you would, like I used to referee soccer. I still referee basketball in the wintertime.
Yeah.
There's plenty of referee jobs if you want to live in Seattle. But yeah, those are like the years where you learn about making a little bit of money. You're still in school, you're still living with your parents. And if you're denied that, then you're not going to be as well-rounded once we actually need you in the workforce. You're not going to have the life experience.
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, and I think too, like the role of the state at the federal level has also, I think, become largely obsolete. And we're not thinking about it yet in this way, but I hope that Bitcoin really changes the way maps look. Especially United States has a different place in global geopolitics than Canada does. In Canada, we don't really have the resources or the budget to be tipping the scales in international conflicts, and we try to do our part. But the average Canadian really doesn't get a lot of benefit from the federal government, and they take a lot. So the exchange of what the average Canadian gets from the federal government in exchange for what's taken from them to make it happen is pretty out of whack. So there's some conversation right now that Alberta, which is kind of like the Texas of Canada, might consider separating from Canada. And I mean, a big part of the argument is the average taxpayer in Alberta, the biggest part of their tax bill goes to the federal government. And I think this is another thing that really should change with Bitcoin. If we're paying taxes, the biggest part should go to where you're living locally. And then at the next, at the state level or at the province level. That makes perfect sense to me. The super state, the nation state's role historically had a lot to do with protecting people's private property rights, like protecting people.
It's like the one job
yeah. But we're not going to be invaded ever. That's over. And especially I think AI and drones and all this stuff is going to really change what large scale kinetic warfare even looks like. So I don't know what the argument is for these massive federal governments anymore in most countries. And if you just took the money the resources that are being rerouted from the average person and local economies and sent to Ottawa right now, and you just left it where it was, that would probably be enough to fix things. I mean, at least for a time.
Yeah, it's the same in the U.S. The local schools, the local police departments, fire departments, they're all underfunded. And then the federal government is blowing trillions and trillions of dollars a year. And we just had this promise of cutting the size and scope of government. I bought into it because I'm optimistic. I bought into it. I said, please, I hope this guy is serious. Let's just cut the government a little bit, right? Just even 1% cut would be a beautiful thing to see. Instead, we get the big, beautiful bill and spending is going up, right?
Yeah.
The military is getting even bigger. So
this is where, like, I was a student of politics. I thought about a career in politics for a time when I was younger, and it's just the the political system has been fused with the money printer. Like, that's just how it works. So I don't think this is another one of those things. If we just ended money printing, the current political system couldn't work the way it does. Like, it doesn't know how to work in that kind of, like, we're actually going to need a new system. This is where I think, like, Bitcoiners should be ready for, if you really want this, like, sound money, hard money world, you're going to have to be ready for, like, some pretty significant changes. It's like that idea we were just talking about a few minutes ago about you can't just have the money work backwards and have everything else stay the same. Like, that will extend to the way we think about governing ourselves. It has to, because the mentality of every government is grow forever. It's like it's like inherently fiat, and that's because we've all grown up in this paradigm, and we all think that way about everything until we start thinking about Bitcoin, and so they're just completely incongruous. They cannot coexist.
So I want to ask you, because I listened to your podcast with Ben on Tartaria, was it?
Yeah.
And we don't need to rehash that whole thing because it was a fantastic podcast. Highly recommend listening to it. But I went on Twitter, and on Twitter it was blocked, or it was labeled as dangerous information.
Really?
Something like that. It was like, I got a screenshot. It said, like, you got to either click through it or it was banned. And this is what it was. If you didn't put your age in your Twitter account, then it was unable to be viewed. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
So I guess my question is, like, what makes information dangerous? How can information be dangerous?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I always kind of think that, if they're trying to prevent you from seeing something, then you're probably onto something that you want to see.
When I search something on AI and it tells me it's a unfounded conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, whoa, this is something to look into further.
Yeah.
It's like, it's actually the
Further
opposite.
research required. Yeah. Yeah. And, it's like with anything, if it was totally ridiculous, then nobody would even pay it any attention, and it would just go away on its own. So I think some of these things, whether they're true or not, there's something about them that has some thread of truth, or something that is uncovering maybe a narrative that we've been told that doesn't make sense. And that's kind of like how I think about Tartaria. It's, for me, it's a question about whether or not what we've been told about some of these older buildings, the timelines of when they were built and by who, if that holds water. And there's a great one, like in your area in Olympia.
Mm-hmm. It's the middle of nowhere.
It's the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Why is that building
I've
there?
actually I've driven past it a bunch of times. I've never even stopped to look at it, because it's like, why would you build it there?
Uh-huh.
Like, you build it by the water where you could easily transport goods and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's a beautiful building too.
And, like, we know what those buildings weigh. So, like, how did you decide to get 50,000 tons of granite there? And where did it come from? Like, where was the quarry? Yeah. Who did the quarrying? Who were the master masons and the master architects? Like, the mathematics involved in planning these things often is a hilarious story of, like, it's like, this is a 20-year-old, and it was his first stab at building a building, and he just punched out this, like, it's crazy. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think, like, yeah, there's some aspects of it that are just hard to believe, of the traditional story. And I wonder more broadly if we are going towards some kind of, like, moment of disclosure, not about any one subject in particular, but it's like we're kind of 15 years, call it, into this planet-wide social media experiment, where the virality of ideas is accelerating and human connectivity is, like, going vertical. And this is another thing that I think we're kind of, like, living in right now that is new. So we don't necessarily know what the endpoint is, or what maybe we're not even taking stock of what we're actually experiencing right now, but it's like maybe feels like a kind of mania or something, like where we're consuming, we have access to so much information. Like the average person now has access to the kind of information that like the president had in the 60s. Like it's in your hand, and you can find things out about anything. You can teach yourself about anything. You can connect to people anywhere in the world. Like I think like hard money ideas were slow moving because nobody taught Austrian economics, and there was no such thing as a podcast. So like in the 90s, you only knew about Mises if you somehow got into gold. These ideas were just moving really slowly. It's not that people didn't know about hard money. There just wasn't the same level of information sharing that's going on now. And this is another thing that I just think we have to consider, that we're in the middle of something. We're not at the end. It's a process that's unfolding and spiraling. So is humanity like heading to a moment where we have like a giant aha, and like a lot of things all of a sudden don't make sense to enough people, that all at once we're like, what is actually going on here? Yeah. And so this could be true for money. Like I actually think this is what's going on with Bitcoin and the monetary system. And it is an exponential idea. Like Bitcoin is an incredibly viral information packet. And inside that information packet is something that makes you compelled to make other people want to understand it too.
It's so true.
And it's not the only one like that. Like there are a lot of ideas floating around that 20 years ago people thought were just generally completely insane, that a lot of really smart people are, stopping to think about now, because they can find other people who can credibly discuss this stuff, and you don't have to go to a convention to find a room full of people that want to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and these are just things that like I'm paying attention to, like I know that, medications, healthcare, diet, like there's all of these crazy rabbit holes, and you just, any one person doesn't have the bandwidth probably to know all of the rabbit holes people are going down. Pesticides, cancer, it's like
EMFs.
Yes. Yeah. So, and like generally, I think I was talking about how things were different when I was a kid. It was just like sleepier, like people got the news once a day. It was a once a day event. You might read the newspaper, and outside of that, you wouldn't have been in contact with anybody that you didn't physically have contact with. Like it would just be the people you saw in the day. Now, like, in a normal day, I'm literally talking to people all over the world every day, just like everybody else is. I have friends in Europe, I have friends in blah, blah, blah. So that's also like, it's impossible to like contain an idea in a geography now, which is also a new thing. Yeah. I mean, you were saying about Lowry and like destroying the internet. Like, I think that it's interesting to me that the term Great Awakening was kind of coined around or at the same time as the term the Great Reset. I've always kind of thought that was odd.
Which was like early 2010s? What was that? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when I was waking up, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like, I think of Great Reset as like, it's like factory reset, like going back to like plugging back into the Matrix. And it's like, I think that this actually did happen in 2020, where that was an event that just actually woke a lot of people up, and like gave a lot of people a pause to stop and think about what was going on. And that I think also just started a process. And I've wondered about whether or not they knew that this would happen. It's like maybe there was some guess about, like, I kind of think people at the highest levels of government have an internal timeline on something like artificial general intelligence, because they would be talking to the people like Sam Altman and Elon, and like who really have a guess. So they probably have a timeline. And Ray Kurzweil was making guesses about AGI like 40 years ago. And I think the same thing would be maybe true for like, if the FBI created Facebook and these social media tools, like it's a social experiment. Like, would they have a guess about how many years they had before this like moment of exponential awareness?
That's what it feels like for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think, like, yes, big questions like, what is the point of life? In my view, you mentioned procreating and making the world better. Those things are just wired into us. Also, like, I don't know how to phrase it, but elevating your soul, like your consciousness, raising your consciousness levels. And in my view, the thing that helps me make sense of the world is that there's some type of war on souls, like on a deep level. And it sounds crazy maybe to some, but once you start looking at the world through like why would they do these things? Like why would these things be happening? It's because even like the 5G and the EMFs and the food, like it's just an all-out attack
Chemtrails.
on chemtrails, a big one. Spraying aluminum, which literally decreases your IQ.
Yeah.
Fluoride in the water, fluoride in the everything. So yeah, Bitcoin is a very, very powerful idea. And I also love what you said, because I always ask the question of like, why do we want to orange pill people so bad?
Yeah.
It's like, it's contagious.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like I talk about this a little bit in my book, but I feel like we, without Bitcoin, don't have the grounds for the expectation of something being sensible. So one thing that Bitcoin really does that's really cool is it creates a baseline expectation that something makes sense. So that in the case of Bitcoin, that thing is money. Like we just expect a sensible money system that is rooted in mathematics and has rules. And if we can all get to a place where we agree that money should make sense, then it shouldn't be that hard to agree that everything else should make sense too. But in the absence of that, I think the opposite is true. And so we don't really have any way to say like, this should make sense. Why are you spraying the skies? Is like, well, why is a Coke $2 right now when it was $1 5 years ago? Like, I don't know. It's the same. Nothing, doesn't cost any more to make it. Yeah. So I think that, and this is the underlying idea from that Renaissance presentation I made in El Salvador, the Golden Age of Reason, is this idea that it's more about the society's like, collective understanding of something and how this is what civilization is, right? So like right now we're living through this time where like tent cities are becoming normal. All these things are just becoming socially accepted, like that term, like what is socially acceptable. And again, we switch it, and so the money works backwards. And I think we start having a social expectation that things improve instead of get worse. That to me makes sense.
Yeah.
But so this is why, personally, partly why I'm passionate about trying to orange pill as many people as I can, because I think it is actually the most effective use of our time to drive positive change in the world. And this is also why I think like I'm not the only one who thinks this. And this is why I think a lot of people have this feeling. It's not about pumping your bags. It's about like making a difference, right? This is the other part I think about, like, what does it mean to want to create a better tomorrow? It's like rolling up your sleeves and doing whatever you think you can do to affect positive change. And if you've understood this idea that essentially all the other problems are downstream of, then you're basically going right to the root to really make a difference. So I look forward to a time where there's 50,000 times as many of us, and the signal is so loud that it becomes impossible to hear anything else.
I love that. I just want to share something with you, because I was in college and I took a journalism class, and my professor was like, "Hey man, you're clearly passionate about this." Like, I was in a journalism class with all these students of journalism, and I was a business student, but I enjoyed this class more than anything. He told me you should get a camera in your hands and think about this as a viable career path. So I bought my first camera because I saw storytelling, specifically with a camera, visual storytelling, as potentially the most impactful way to impact the world. And over the years, it's very hard to just put food on the table as like a freelance video photographer. And so I kind of gave it up. I was like, let me get into entrepreneurship and business and build things, and then I can sell them. Don't have to work on them. I can build a system that, I could step away from, and that's really, in my conception at 25, the only way to like build real wealth. Then I found Bitcoin while doing that and started listening to Bitcoin podcasts all the time. And actually Bitcoin drew me back into creativity. Now I'm making a documentary, making podcasts, and I just have this sense like I'm on the right path. Not like making money really much at all. I still, I'm a hired gun. I'll make money when I can. But I think that's one of the most beautiful things of Bitcoin, is that it brings us towards the thing that we're meant to do on this earth.
Yeah.
And I hope that for everyone. I hope that for my kids. Like, I would not want, even if I had hundreds of millions of dollars in today's purchasing power, but my kids still had to live in this slavery world, that's a failure of my life.
Totally.
So for me, what drives me is like, I'm starting to think about having kids, or not even just my kids. Like, humans have this ability to be empathetic like other animals do not have. And so I project like the freaking kids on the other side of the world getting bombed by our bombs that we pay for. And I'm like, my hands, like my producer in the documentary, he has this great line. He's like, when you use fiat, you have blood on your hands. And it hit me so hard. It's like, man, I started crying when he told me that. I was like, that's so true. Like, when you use Bitcoin, you don't have blood on your hands. So it's a beautiful thing. So 2 books you've written.
Yeah.
Tao of Bitcoin, which I've read, which is awesome. And then the second one I haven't read is Bitcoin for Corporations or
Financial Advisors. Yeah.
Financial Advisors.
Yeah.
Okay. What's next for you, man? Like, are you going to write another book? Are you working on the business? Like, talk to me about.
Sure. Yeah. I'm actually like almost done a fairly significant rework of the Tao of Bitcoin.
Okay.
Which I'm really excited about. I published it originally in the spring of 2024, and it was my second book, but it was really my first one that I had felt like it was really something that I cared a lot about. And I think, you can always, it's like a painting, it's hard to know when it's done. But as I've spent the last year kind of like talking about it and refining the ideas and actually understanding Bitcoin more deeply, and it, really even reaching into my, like, the root of my spiritual practice more deeply, I've like wanted to change the message and so I've been spending a lot of time on that, and I hope that it should be ready in September or October.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very soon.
Yeah.
What are the main changes? Like, I mean, don't spill the whole beans, but yeah.
It's actually shifting the book so that the message comes through more strongly, that it has to do with this subjective experience of time that can change when your understanding of like the relationship between money and time is altered. And that's really what I think, the Tao of Bitcoin is, this sense of tranquility that accompanies a comprehension of energy money. And then the book, the changes in the book are hopefully to make that part of the narrative stronger. Yeah. And we'll see from there. Like I would never write off the idea of writing a second or a subsequent book, but I don't really have an idea to right now. The business is really exciting. It's moving quickly, and we're really focused on getting launched into the US, which hopefully will happen later this year. And, we really want to be the first company that convinces a big company to pay their staff in Bitcoin.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that part of the reason it is one of those, build the world you want to see. I want to believe that part of the reason it hasn't happened yet is because the tool hasn't existed. These big companies, we're really like a payroll human resource software company. We just happen to be a Bitcoin company. And I think that the tool that would be required for a company like Amazon to pay their staff in Bitcoin doesn't exist yet. And this is where we're going.
Wow, that's a big mission.
Yeah.
I love it though. Yeah. You have the services on the front end. This is something I picked up from a company called Order Moon. It's like, if you come in the front door with Bitcoin, then it's like, well, we don't need that. But if you come in the front door, you're like, we offer these services that are going to be better than your current alternative. And then Bitcoin's in the background. It's moving one step closer to that world. And if you're right about, and we're right about where things are going with Bitcoin, then naturally an Amazon or a Microsoft or Apple will get to that point and they'll already be ready for it. So how are you doing that? Like, what's the process? Like how do you even go about like starting those conversations or planting those seeds? And
I mean, our team is, in addition to being Bitcoiners, they are experts from various parts of that world. Software as a service, human resource software. So we have been really intentional with our hiring and the kinds of people we're bringing into the company, and we're building a company that is built to do that one thing. And so I think that's the answer to that one.
What's kind of the current status of things? Like, have you onboarded certain companies, smaller companies? How's it been going?
Yeah,
kind
mostly
the traction, if you will.
So it's Canadian companies only right now, and so far sort of in that like SMB, small medium size space. Where we've seen the most success so far are companies where an owner or a key executive is a Bitcoiner, and that's okay. It's actually where we're really focused right now, because we're I think as like any Bitcoiner, you can orange pill people when they're ready, but like orange pilling the people who explicitly aren't ready is really tough slugging, and it's all totally waste of time. Yeah, so we are hunting for these companies where there's a key person that would understand why this would be interesting, and starting there. And I'll just also believe that there are already executives in big companies that understand this. So it's just a matter of us to connect to those people too. Part of that is them understanding that we exist, which will take some time. But, like people like Ryan Cohen at GameStop, people are coming online. And that's our task, is to find them.
I love it. Last question I've got for you, because I need some motivation personally. No, I don't need motivation. I'm going to be fine. But how do you balance a huge project like writing a book, like on a day-to-day basis? Like, do you have any practices or advice? Because I'm editing this film right now, and it is an absolute grind. I feel like I'm not making progress. I'm just, clicks, clicks, clicks. I know I'm making progress, but I can't see it yet. Yeah. So do you have any advice for someone who wants to embark on something that's a bit of a journey?
Good question. I always just sort of say, like, do what you love. And so if you get to a place where it feels like a bit of a grind, I would say take a break. That would be my piece of advice. I wrote the book, I don't want to say easily, but when I had been thinking about it for a long time. And so when I finally sat down to start doing it, it came out like the first draft maybe only took me 6 weeks to get down. So it was just fun. But that's the reason I didn't immediately start a second one is, because I didn't have the genuine inspiration. So I think things should always feel easy, and that doesn't mean that like they're not work, but like, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm doing that on a micro level, because I got back from the trip and I just got straight into the editing, and it's been overwhelming. I've taken a couple little camping trips, which help. Like, I'll come back from a 2-day camp trip and I'm like fired up and I have a great productive week. But maybe next week I'm turning 31, so maybe I'll take a few more days, and I want to get this thing out. I believe in it, but just curious if you had any ideas there. So yeah. Well, Scott, thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
Love talking to you. Just fantastic thinker, and Glad to be your friend, man. So,
yeah, thanks. Likewise.
Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
All right, that's a wrap on the episode. Thank you guys for watching. If you got any value out of this show, I would love to hear about it. You can tag me on Twitter or Noster, or just drop a comment below, help spread the message, share this show. And if you haven't already, please leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening to podcasts. It means a ton and it helps grow this show. So on that note, I've been thinking about ways that I can make this more sustainable, monetize the podcast without selling out or, selling you guys something that I don't genuinely believe in. And the way that I'm going to do that is by being transparent and just sharing what I'm working on and giving you guys opportunities to support it if you believe in it. So first off, I'm going to Bulgaria in just a few weeks to make a film called Build on Bitcoin, The Bulgarian Journey. I'll be traveling the country, learning about the different initiatives and telling the Bulgarian story, hopefully inspiring people to go from Bitcoin holders to actually Bitcoin builders. If you're interested in either supporting the project, $89 gets your name listed in the credits of the film, or just following along. We post all of our updates here on Geyser, and this is our Lightning address if you'd like to donate some sats. Secondly, if you're looking to level up your energy, cognition, and focus, I've got the perfect product for you. It's called EARTHY Energy. I founded this company, EARTHY, in 2023 because I recognized that the supplement industry was shady, was full of crap, was using things like proprietary blends to protect themselves, but actually hurt their customers because their customers are spending money to make themselves healthier. How can they possibly make themselves healthier if they don't know what they're putting in their body? So we recognized that there was an incentive problem here, and we started EARTHY with complete ingredient transparency. So we actually tell you, if you can see that, we tell you every single ingredient in the product and where it's from down to the farm level. So in one scoop of EARTHY Energy, you're gonna get almost 5 grams of cacao, which gives it the delicious hot chocolate flavor, some cardiovascular benefits, 120 milligrams of guayusa, which is a clean caffeine source from the Amazon. And it's similar to yerba mate. It gives you this long lasting clean energy without a crash. And then functional mushrooms, lion's mane and cordyceps give you a brain, cognition, memory, focus boost with the lion's mane, as well as some immunity. The cordyceps gives you ATP production, which actually improves cardiovascular performance. It's almost like a little performance enhancing drug, if you know what I mean. So if you are looking to level up your work, your workout, whatever you're working on, the goals and dreams that you have in this life they're attainable, but you need the energy to go after them. And I started this company and I believe in this product, so that's why I'm sharing it with you guys. So if you want to try EARTHY, the link is down below. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your guys' support. Till next time.